What's going on, squad? It's another wonderful day here on A Brodacious Life. We're super excited that you're here. Of course, my name is Jonathan. I've got the famous Dr. J with me. He's over there. However this backwards camera system works, he's over there being awesome. Dr. J, how's it going today, buddy? What's popping this week?
Yeah, man, things are going great. Property that my company just purchased, man, we just put a new roof on it, new architectural shingles, got new skylights. We took off some of those old 1980s dome skylights and put on these flat, clear looking skylights, making it look all professional. And yeah, I just love it. I've had a great week, man. I love it when you take a good house and you just upgrade it. And, I don't know, it's just a great feeling. So things are going really, really good in the world of that. And in, my high school band directing stuff going on, we had a killer weekend this weekend. So yeah, awesome. Coach is good. Business is good.
Yeah, man, dude, slaying it. It.
Lighting the fire, slaying the devils.
That's right. The demons. So I wanted to have a discussion today, and I'm hopefully not going to offend anyone, but we have a bottom tier.
Love it when you start it that way.
Oh, make sure you hit that like and subscribe now.
You gotta get that in now.
So,
hello, everyone. Here we go.
So, of course, our 5S, we've got our faith, family, freedom, finance, and fun. We've not spent too much time talking about faith, and I really wanted to hone in on the word faith today. What are your thoughts on faith?
Yeah, I think faith is really, really important because, look, at the end of the day, everyone listening to this show, all of you ask the same three basic questions. Actually, two basic questions, sorry. You ask, who am I? Why am I here? And where do I go when I die? That's three questions. So I'll say it again. Everybody on the face of the planet asks three questions. Atheists out there listening, you ask these questions. Agnostics, you, Christian, Hindu, Muslim, we all ask three questions. Who am I? Why am I here? And where do I go when I die? And Chef, I'd argue they're the only three questions in life that actually matter. So yeah, faith, for most people, is the thing that provides meaning and answers those three questions.
So it's very hard for, especially non-believers, to understand faith. It's almost like a shutoff. And I spent time as an atheist, my early college years, kind of went through this phase where, I'd grown up in the church. And then I think I was honestly just kind of sour with the church more than I was with God. And I kind of wanted to have this discussion on how do you describe faith and what does faith mean? So for this, I made a delicious example. I'm a big boy, so I do things in big boy ways. So I have this beautiful, delicious plate of cinnamon rolls.
Oh my gosh. And if you're watching the podcast version or listening to the podcast version, you need to right now go to the YouTube version, because on the YouTube version, he just held up a plate of massive cinnamon rolls.
These are from scratch. They are delicious. They're buttery. They're sweet. They have a little hint of savory. It's just absolutely beautiful. It's layered with cinnamon and sugar between each layer. It's topped with tangy, sweet, yet savory cream cheese frosting. We can look at this giant cinnamon roll right there. We can look at this giant cinnamon roll and say, yes, I want that. I have faith that this cinnamon roll is going to rock my world, that it's going to bring my tummy to the promised land. But what if I did not know anything about the cinnamon roll? Say I were not even from like Western culture, or an alien from another planet, if you will, and I've never experienced a cinnamon roll. How would I know that that would be something that I want on the inside of me? So how do I know that there's not mustard inside of that thing? How do I know there's not sauerkraut or wasabi or some other spice that is guaranteed to make me gag? We must have faith, and you will, that this cinnamon roll is not going to make me sick. We have faith that this cinnamon roll is going to fulfill my sugar craze. So as we kind of get into that, we're gonna come back to these delicious, decadent cinnamon rolls. Oh my gosh, they're so good.
No, you're just teasing me. You're just teasing me, Chef.
Oh my goodness. So we're going to come back to this idea of the cinnamon roll. And we're going to talk about some topics here. We're going to come back and it's all going to make sense. I'm pumped about it.
Yeah, I'm hungry about it.
That's so good. So the first thing is, how do we describe faith? You know, I think that's kind of the key part is, you know, the definition of faith. And I think that's where we need to start there. What's the definition of faith?
Well, look, faith by definition is like complete trust or confidence in someone or something. In this manner that we're discussing today, it's a strong belief in God or in the doctrines of religion based on like a spiritual apprehension rather than proof. I always say faith is kind of like the wind. I can't see the wind, but I can feel the effects of the wind. And so sometimes I think faith and belief are kind of the same thing, except for sometimes, you know, one can believe and not do anything, but faith is strong belief such that it leads you to an action. I mean, how would you describe faith to someone, Chef?
I think you made a good point in there. I kind of had a beef with the way Wikipedia described definition. That was the definition above is Wikipedia. It describes it as a noun. And I like what you just said there, that it is a verb. You know, faith can be described as a belief or trust in something and someone that's it's without requiring empirical evidence or proof. It doesn't require test tubes and charts and all that to be proven. It often involves a sense of certainty or conviction that a certain, you know, you're certain that in a particular area, principle, or person is true, trustworthy, even in the absence of concrete evidence. Faith can take many different forms. It can be directed, of course, towards different variety of objects. You know, obviously we're talking about cinnamon rolls, you know, but it also includes our religious and spiritual beliefs, philosophical concepts, personal values, even relationships with other people. We have to have faith in my wife. I have to have faith in my wife, that my wife's going to do the right thing, that my wife's not going to run out on me, that my wife's not going to cheat on me. I have to have faith, and she has to have faith in me. For many people, faith provides a sense of purpose, meaning, and guidance in their lives, helping them to navigate through difficult situations and find hope and comfort in challenging times. And then faith can also it's deeply personal and it's subjective to experience, shaped by individual beliefs, experiences, culture, social influences. And I think ultimately, I believe it's exactly what you described. I tried to be open-minded and use a couple of different definitions there that are out there from a worldly view. I think I tried to provide the spiritual biblical view there, but I really go back to what you said earlier. And I want to say that, how do I describe faith? It's a verb. It's putting action to what I believe.
Yeah, I think that's huge. You know, faith, if faith is belief such that it requires an action, like you said. And I think too, a lot of people say, you know, well, you just got to have faith. You just got to have faith. I will say, Chef, you know, faith by itself, just action is not enough. I think also it's faith in a correct practice or a correct thing. You know, from a Christian sense, maybe it's a faith in God. But I like how you said faith, and then you used your wife as an example. And I think that's a key thing to discuss too, because as we're developing our faith, what we're developing our faith in matters. For example, I am totally into this because today we're talking about developing faith that a cinnamon roll, like you mentioned, is going to taste good. But I wouldn't be as interested in developing faith that collard greens are going to taste good too. So I think both faith and what you're attempting or desiring to have faith in, I think all that matters. But let me ask you this, Chef, how do we develop or earn faith in God, you know, or this delicious cinnamon roll? How do we know it's going to be amazing? Talk a little bit about that.
So it really comes down to 4 key points. The first one is personal experience. Now, for many people, faith is developed through personal experiences that, you know, they provide evidence, confirmation of a particular belief or idea. This might include experiences of spiritual, religious significance, such as a feeling of connection to higher power, experience a profound sense of peace or joy and meditation and power. So I know from personal experience, if you will, that if I take a delicious bite, look at that underside. Look at all that beautiful cinnamon right there. I know that that's going to be filled with delicious cinnamon sugar and melted butter. I know because I have personal experience. And in my faith, I have that personal experience that God has taken care of me every single time, that he's Jehovah Jireh. He will provide. And he's done that time and time again.
Yeah, looking back to, there was a poem or a famous saying that it was called The Footprints. I don't know if you remember this, but it was basically, there's this guy and he's walking down the beach and he's young. And as he looks, he sees two sets of footprints, and all the good times of his life, there were two sets of footprints. And he knew that one set of those footprints, the bigger one, were God's, and the small ones were his. And God was leading him through all those good times. Then he noticed on the sands of his life there, he approached some bad times. And in those bad times, there were only one set of footprints. And he paused and he got mad at God. And he said, God, how could you? Every time my life got bad or hard, you were gone. And I was walking by myself. And the end of that saying is when God looked at him and said, no, my child, what you don't understand is in those hard times where you thought you were alone, you weren't alone. Those footprints were mine because I was picking you up and I carried you through all those circumstances and all those times. And I think about our personal experiences and why that matters, that our perception sometimes is that we're alone, but in actuality, even in our personal experiences, that God is actually holding us and walking those things with us. And I take a lot of great peace in knowing that. But I think sometimes, Chef, it's hard, especially with different cultures and different experiences, to really understand that. I mean, what are your thoughts on this?
So cultural and social influences play a key part in what we believe. Obviously, the Christian faith has played a key part in how our country has navigated for, nearly 250, 300 years. Faith can only be shaped. Faith can also be shaped by culture and social experiences such as family traditions, religious, philosophical teachings on the beliefs or practices of a particular community. So exposure to these influences over time help to reinforce a particular set of beliefs, values, leading to the development of faith. I and my family had two parents who were strong believers in Christ. Their parents on both sides, strong believers in the faith, and their parents on both sides, strong believers in faith. There's a cultural experience. I grew up in a time here in the South where we still had God and school was still very intermittent. And I had a cultural experience that those two things were combined. And the same thing, it kind of applies again for my cinnamon rolls. I have a cultural experience with those cinnamon rolls. I've seen them in the gas station, so they're not near as that fluffy and delicious. I've seen them in magazines. I've seen them on YouTube. I have had cultural experiences around me. And though maybe I've not tasted it, I have people that are culturally around me that are telling me that this is delicious.
It does look delicious. It does look delicious. Let's talk a little bit about faith as it relates to like reflection. I mean, I find God sometimes in peace and stillness. I've talked a lot recently about how I'm on this journey of kind of reading about mindfulness and meditation. Now, not from like a Buddhist meditation or anything like that, but just from silently reflecting and trying to think like that poem I shared, like by being calm and being still and realizing that it's not even me walking, that in these hard moments, I'm actually being carried. And there's peace in knowing that the Creator isn't just with me, but he's carrying me. But I think it takes a lot of reflection for those things. I mean, share with me a little bit about reflection.
So our brain wants to rationalize everything around us. Our brain has to understand how the world works around us. And it's constantly computing. It wants to compute what's good for it, what's bad for us. Though we don't like to talk about it, what people are good for me, what people are bad for me. And that's why certain people naturally flock together, because our brain has rationalized that, oh, that person kind of looks like me, so I hang out naturally with that person. There's nothing wrong with that. That's just our brain functioning in that way. Well, our faith works in the same way. Faith can also be a product of, some people develop this faith through a process of reflection and analysis. They may weigh the evidence for and against a particular belief or an idea and come to a reasoned conclusion that supports their faith. This week, I've had to go to the doctor this week, and I've had to have some honest reflection on what's going on in my life. And that moment kind of comes down to rationally is at the end of the day, God's going to take care of me. I'm going to need to help take care of my body. I need to not eat that entire plate of cinnamon rolls. In a minute, I'm going to have to suffer and pass that plate on to my wife and kids.
I'm jealous. I'm miles away.
There is a certain reflection there because, again, God has always taken care of me. Anytime that there was an opportunity, something arose, I didn't know how I was going to feed my family or, growing up. I mean, we had several chances like that where we didn't have Christmas gifts, and God always just took care of us. And sometimes that was through the blessings of others. Sometimes it was through miracles, but every single time that we went through something, I know that God has taken care of me. So I have a rational reflection on through history that God has always taken care of it.
Yeah, I think that's pretty true. I've mentioned it before on our show that N.T. Wright wrote a book called Simply Christian. And in that book, he makes the assertion that all of us, in fact, all of you listening to the show right now, whether you're in our YouTube audience or the big growing group on the podcast platform, all of you out there, agnostic, atheist, Christian, whatever else under the sun, Wiccan, we all have a sense inside of us that the justice around us isn't right, that the sense of fairness and equity and equality is not right. Now, we all define that different ways, but we all have a sense that something is just not operating normal. And what N.T. Wright is suggesting, he says that sense of justice that we're longing for, it was put inside of us by God, because we're longing for a world that doesn't exist here. And he is, from the Christian sense, ascertaining that what we are put here is we're longing for a world that is yet to come, that heaven. And that's how some of us believe that God exists, because we are literally, it's ingrained in our DNA to long for something that is yet to be. And I think that's important because we could talk a little bit, and I'd be interested to know your thoughts as far as emotional or intuitive responses, because that's kind of like a sense of intuition that N.T. Wright is saying that we all have this sense, and that faith is also a longing for something that isn't yet, but something inside of us tells us that it could be. Share with me your thoughts on that.
So yeah, my fourth point was emotional intuitive response. Faith can also be a product of emotional intuitive responses to a particular ideas or experiences, our life experiences. Some people may feel a sense of like inner conviction, intuition that a particular belief is true, or they might, and they can't explain why. Again, I keep coming back to the cinnamon roll because I feel like it's kind of like that. I find it that's one. I'm a big boy. You talk to me through food, I get things a lot faster, and we have an emotional connection to God. We have an emotional. We talked about wanting a purpose and a sense of purpose, and that comes through faith. And I really like your comment on that poem in Footsteps. I remember our dad having that posted up on a wall. That poem was up, and there was a beach, and I remember the steps going through, and it's like you said, there's one spot where it goes down and it's single footsteps. And I just kind of want to read a spot from a song that we were singing this morning in church. And now, granted, remember, I do worship with elementary schoolers, and I love it. That is our worship. I get the joy of just being with young kids and hanging out, and seeing God through them is another level experience. But it's a very popular song, and it says, "When I don't see you, when I don't see it, you're working. When I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. And it goes on to say, because that is who you are. And that just really hit me hard this week, that, it says my way maker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. And I got to admit, man, I was in there with a bunch of elementary schoolers, and I was broken, man. I needed that. And faith is just a big part of our lives, and it's not something that we necessarily talk about. We've discussed heavily on, family, freedom, finance, fun, but sometimes it's really hard to discuss faith because it's not something that's as tangible as cinnamon rolls, so it's very hard for others to really harness the full power of faith when we don't know exactly what we have faith in. I grasp that a cinnamon roll is nowhere near the comparison of magnitude of our faith each day. It does, however, bring light. Again, I do a lot in children's ministries, and I get that blessing every single Sunday. I can't make cinnamon rolls for, 30 kids. That's not exactly an option, but I brought in Twinkies, and to see their light bulbs go on, because they've never been able to, we went around the room and tried to describe what faith is. And there was some great answers. And then when we did the exercise, I was just so impressed with their thoughts and their complexities on what faith is and what they believe. A key aspect from what we learned with the children is that as our cultural and social experiences, the world around us runs on this algorithm of social experiences that happens 24/7 in the world. How is someone going to understand faith if it is never discussed in the right way to them? Maybe it has to be discussed with cinnamon rolls and Twinkies. I don't know. But it's important for us to share that our faith with others, not saying to go door to door every day, but living a life that shows God. When we ask, why are you so strong in the faith? You now have an answer. God is there to take care of us every single day. We need to have faith that he is there. He's there to guide. He's there to love. He's here to heal our pains. And most importantly, he's there to keep ourselves faithful. We're there to hold ourselves faithful to his promises, because God has made his promises. Again, he's the maker, the miracle worker, the promise keeper. I'm going to repeat that back, because we've been talking about anointed goals and promises. He's the promise keeper, light in my darkness. That is who you are. What are your thoughts, Dr. J? And I'll stop preaching.
No, I'm getting an amen. I just sat back. I was like, man, I feel like I should be passing an offering plate or something. Oh, goodness.
Oh, my bad.
No, it's all good stuff. It's I would say an action step. In fact, if you're listening right now, write in the comments, or if you're on the podcast, email it to us, or go find this on YouTube or Instagram and write in the comments, what are some things that you have faith in that you can't see? Because I think sometimes we believe, well, because I can't see God and talk to God, that we know you can talk to God through prayer, but like I can't have this conversation like I'm having with you. It doesn't exist. And so therefore I'm going to be an atheist. But now here's the thing, Chef. I knew my son, Jeremy, who is 9 weeks old, he doesn't ever second guess if he's going to float away. And you and I today, we know when we sat down, we don't even second guess gravity. We can't see gravity. We can't taste gravity. Our senses don't know that gravity is there. But I have faith that every morning I stick my foot out, my foot is going to hit the ground, because I have faith that this thing that I've never seen, because I've interacted with it so much, is going to take care of me. And that's gravity. We already mentioned the wind. That's another thing. And so I would give you a challenge in the comments. What are some other things that we can't see, taste, touch, or smell, but we know that we believe in? And if those things are true, if gravity is true, can it not be true as well that we have faith in God? Is that not an acceptable practice? And the final thing I will say is and we've mentioned this before, not to get all scientific because it kind of takes us off the subject, but I cannot prove that God exists. I can't. I can sit here and tell you my story about what he's done for me, and you've mentioned what he's done for you in our faith. But here's the thing. I've yet to find someone that can prove that God doesn't exist. So at its core, faith is simply believing that I have come to my set of conclusions and I believe that they are right. Just like, someone else may conclude that the wind isn't real. We know it's real because we see it rustling the trees. So I'll pause there, Chef, and throw it back to you because I realize I'm rambling a little bit, but I'm really looking forward to seeing what.
I'm right on board with what you're saying. I think there's just so much there that it's really tough for people to grasp when we talk about faith. And the fact that it makes it so intimidating. How do we don't get to have that tangible experience of eating a cinnamon roll. We're going to have a certain level. And I like how you described gravity. For a kid today at church, we talked about dirt. And as crazy as this sounds, if you go to one of the ways that I believe God exists and proves God exists to me is that if I go right now out into my yard and I scoop in and I just get a big old handful of humus, just absolutely beautiful brown dirt made for growing in. That soil is filled with things that are not just dirt. God created an ecosystem that is constantly looping itself. So there are microbes. There are little 6-legged critters in there. There's 8-legged critters in there. There's bacteria. There's leaves. There's all kinds of stuff. And all those things are working symbiotically to make more earth, more things that we need. God created just such an intricate system that's going to happen. So the seed can grow up after it falls from the tree beside it, and it can grow up, or maybe it drops grass, which brings in the deer. The deer come in, they eat that. Guess what? What do? They go number 2. They poop that down, and it starts the whole process. And oh, by the way, what happens? Humans come along. They shoot the deer. They get nutrients from the deer. Now we've got that level of nutrients. Like, it's just so intricate. And if people we really like to think of even our bodies themselves as just this one big one-cell organism. What you don't realize is also, for you to survive right now, you need hundreds of thousands of different organisms that are living in your body right now. I know that's going to freak out somebody, but right now there is hundreds of thousands of organisms that are living in your body. And you actually rely on this symbiotic relationship. And how do you have all of this symbioism? I don't know if that's a word. I'm going to make it a word. Symbioism in our world without there possibly being a creator who put those things together. And no matter how you even can explain that, how do you explain the first particles? And I have to root back to faith. I have to have faith that a creator with purpose, who created the world with purpose. And one last rant, and that I'll be off my rocker here. And with all of this faith, I have faith with 100%. I found it fun that God created the heavens and the earth in one day. He created the animals in one day. He created the weather in one day. And you know what he did for me and you? He took 9 months. He made it what it took us 9 months to be made. How special are you? And how much faith should we have that God didn't rush us? We're something that are uniquely built in the image of God. And I'm going to leave you with that mic drop.
Bam, man.
So so thank you so much for joining our podcast today. We're super excited that you're here. I'm going to go over and try not to eat this entire plate of cinnamon rolls. They're super delicious. Shout out to my daughter, Eliza, for making them for us today. And we hope that you have faith and you're able to describe faith and develop your faith each and every single day. And we're just super blessed that you're here and you're along with the journey. And we're looking forward to being here together in our little brodacious community. Have a great week.